Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. So in this particular video, we're going to be talking about the coveted rare Nintendo PlayStation prototype console that comes up for bid through Heritage Auctions several weeks from now, the beginning of March of this year. Now I did want to talk about this a little bit because there's a lot of people asking me what I think about this particular item, what I think about the market for this item, what do I think the item's worth, and what do I think the item should appraise at. And I wanted to address that all in this video before the auction goes off, so you at least have my take on this particular item at auction at present time. Now, this truly is a historic item in the realm of video game collecting and or video game history, however you want to look at it. Because there's only one known prototype of this particular item, it is pretty much already in the top 1% of the video game collecting marketplace. Regardless of what the auction ends at, it doesn't matter, because if you want one of these items, pretty much only one person or one group of people can own this particular item. Now, for those of you that don't know how historic this item was, this is the prototype console that came out of the failed relationship between Nintendo and Sony when Nintendo was trying to create a CD-ROM system for the Super Nintendo back in the early 1990s. Well, they were working with Sony, and Sony was pretty much all into the partnership until they found out that Nintendo also had a backdoor deal with Philips. This angered Sony, and Nintendo really didn't see an issue with this because Nintendo thought that they had the upper hand. Sony was pretty much developing this item for them, so Sony would not pull out as so Nintendo thought. Well, Sony, being Sony, said, you know what, Nintendo? Screw you. We're taking our system and we're going towards the door. Well, that happened, and Nintendo thought nothing of it until 1994 rolled around and Sony unveiled the Sony PlayStation video game system that would be sold in North America in 1995. This caught Nintendo a little off guard. Nintendo now had a fierce competitor and the name of Sony, who created a whole brand of video game consoles that would pretty much be Nintendo's fiercest competitor to this very day. So that's why this item is historic. It's for what it means in video game history and video game collecting lore. Now, before we go any further, since this item is a one-of-a-kind item, I have to give some caution to the people that watch my videos and the people that are clamoring to get this item as a whole, and the people also asking me what this item is going to appraise at. You have to understand, when we look in the antiques and collectibles trade at one-of-a-kind items with no previous sale record, they are a bitch to appraise. You could ask 4 different appraisers who are all at the top of their game what they think this item is going to sell for, and each one will give you a different answer. Another thing you also have to be privy to is market manipulation attempts from either the auction house or the consignor and or seller of this particular item. One of the things that I don't like about this sale, guys, and I want to be very honest with you and upfront and very unbiased in this approach, when it was discovered that the person was going to put this up for auction, the original consignor said, you know, we got offers of $1.2 million for this particular item. Now, anybody who has spent any significant amount of time in the antiques and collectibles trade, going back decades, like myself, can easily tell you that every time a quote-unquote rare or one-of-a-kind item comes up for bid, especially if there's no previous price track history, you better believe when that item is consigned to the auction house, either the auction house or the consignor releases a statement that says, just understand that we already got offers of $100,000, $500,000, $1.2 million, $2 million on this item, and we decided to consign it at auction instead. I consider this to be complete BS. Reason being is, what either the auction house or the consignor is doing is they're attempting to prime the market for this particular item. So it's already floating around in a lot of unsophisticated investors' heads out there that, oh, the Sony Nintendo prototype system that's going up for bid at Heritage Auctions is worth $1.2 million. Well, it can't be worth $1.2 million because a valid marketplace does not exist as of yet for the item. Now, after this item is sold, and if it sells for $1.3 or $100,000 or $500,000, whatever that final hammer price is, will then know the value of this item, which brings me to caveat number 2. One of the things that I'm concerned about with this item being auctioned in present day, meaning 2020, is in regards to a lot of the market manipulation that's taking place in the vintage and graded video game marketplace at present time. And yes, I am referring to the factory sealed, sticker sealed copy of Super Mario Brothers that was graded and sold by Heritage Auctions and repurchased by certain questionable individuals in the trade who pretty much paid a record sum of it to prime the pump and the market for rare video games. I'm left to wonder, is this item going to sell to a subsequent group of individuals who are going to buy it as a quote-unquote investment? If that is the case, and I was planning to bid on this item, that would cause me to have a lot of caution. And that's what I'm going to say to anybody watching this video who is thinking about bidding on this item. Just be very careful. At present time, this is a historic item. There's no question in that. Again, it's in the top 1% of the market for video game collectibles. But also you have to be aware that there is a lot of people, a lot of collectors, a lot of sophisticated investors out there who are really trying to make video games and video game collectibles the next big thing. This is ironically having an interesting effect on the vintage comic book marketplace at present time, which we're going to talk about in depth in an upcoming video. But I don't think what people realize is any type of collector, speculator, investor, unsophisticated or sophisticated, has to work with a budget. So let me give you an example. Let's say I spend $10,000 to $20,000 a year on coins. Let's say that I pretty much get sick of collecting coins and I move to another collecting category. Well, guess what? The coin collecting marketplace that I was infusing with cash to the tune of $10,000 to $20,000 a year in is now left $10,000 to $20,000 in the hole. I took that money and I started injecting it into another collecting category. Well, ironically, if you read all the literature out there about who the main adopters of graded video games are at present time, it's comic book collectors. If you don't believe me, even Heritage Auctions, they're putting this item in their comic listings because Heritage Auctions doesn't have a separate department for graded video games and or vintage toys at present time. Which brings me to a side note. If there's anyone from Heritage Auctions watching this video, please create a separate department for graded video games and vintage toys and stop lumping the stuff in with comic books and animation art. Please, you have a category for everything else, whether we talk about movie posters, fine or decorative art, coins and currency, whatever it is, just already create the category for graded video games and vintage toys, please. Okay, now back to what I'm stating. Well, ironically, there's a lot of vintage comic book collectors that are moving money out of vintage comic books and they're going into graded games because the market right now is on fire. So in a sense, we have one speculative bubble that is actually fueling another speculative bubble. And what I mean by that is you have the vintage comic book marketplace, which is in a speculative bubble, that is pretty much causing people to come back into that market, sell off their collections, take the proceeds, and then pump it into graded video games. Now, what nobody really is talking about is, well, if I was spending $10,000 or $20,000 a year on graded comic books, and I'm now spending it on graded video games, guess what? That's $10,000 to $20,000 that isn't going into that market anymore. If enough people do that, and they leave that particular collecting category and come over here to video games, you know what's going to happen? Video games are going to start to exponentially increase, which they are, and vintage comic books are going to start to fall in value across the board. Now, I already hear a lot of my vintage comic book collector friends cheering en masse because this could usher in a wave of pretty much a market correction on that front. We're not there yet, guys. However, I do believe that certain more speculative books in the realm of vintage comic books are going to fall in value as a result of this dynamic. More on this in an upcoming video. To get back to the point though, the Nintendo PlayStation prototype system. If I was a buyer on this, I'm going to be very honest. I understand this is the only unit out there. I understand that if you don't buy now, you don't bid on it, you're going to miss your chance. Given what's happening in the collectible video game marketplace at present time, I would take a wait-and-see attitude on this. I'm just stating it. That's just my expert opinion from somebody in the antiques and collectibles trade who could even be wrong on this. But I'm just stating, after what happened with the Nintendo factory sealed, sticker sealed Super Mario Brothers game, I'm very hesitant to wonder if somebody or a group of individuals isn't going to try to come into the market and manipulate it again by claiming, hey, we paid a record price for this item, when in all actuality, they pretty much formed a partnership, funneled money into it, and bought it as an investment to hold. I do not see the average person wanting to own or should be owning an item like this. Because let's be honest, let's say that you're out there, you're an average person, and you can honestly afford this item. Let's just keep it real. Let's say that you can afford this item. What are you gonna do with it? You're gonna put it in a glass case in one of your rooms? You're gonna put it on display in your video game room? What if your house burns down? What if your house gets robbed? People don't think long term. You know, it's just like on comic collecting forums. I'll often hear people say, if I had an Action Comics 1, I would crack it out of the CGC case and read it. Well, that's stupid talk. That's why you will never own an Action Comics 1, because you don't understand the dynamics and the responsibility of owning and or investing in an item of that caliber. It's the same thing with this, guys. I honestly hope this item does sell for $500,000 or more, but honestly, I'm here to tell you, my gut instinct is that this item is going to sell anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000. That's really what my gut instinct is. Now, if this item would sell for less than $100,000, let's just say that demand isn't there, nobody's trying to manipulate the market, nobody's coming in and priming the pump per se, Heritage Auctions and also the consignor are going to be left with a proverbial black eye. This is going to be a very bad sign for a lot of these esoteric items that come up for bid. However, I do see this item selling for at least more than $100,000. I don't see it selling for several $1,000,000. I really caution people who are getting involved in this particular auction thinking the sky's the limit, or some of the Timmies and Poindexters out there who just want to play big shot. They're going to register an account on Heritage Auctions and they're going to bid a stupid amount on this just to shill bid it up to the several $1,000,000 range. You really have to be careful if you're that dumb to do something of an item of this caliber. Because if it doesn't sell for more than $100,000 and you put in a bid for $80,000, $85,000, you could very well end up owning it. You're going to own Heritage Auctions big time, and they will come after you for the money. It's a legally binding contract. So I just want to be careful with some of you guys, because I've read some comments on collecting forums where people were going to shill bid the auction. And I really don't think that's cool to the people that can afford and want to own an item like this. So there you have my thoughts on this item. Again, my prediction and my hope is that it at least sells for $100,000 all the way up to $500,000. If it goes more, that's great. It's more power to the seller, more power to the auction house. And you know what? I'm not going to be bitter about it. I'm going to be happy that somebody paid $1 million or $2 million or $3 million to get an item like this. What do I care at the end of the day? However, would I be bidding on it? No. This is an interesting item. It is not something for me. It's not something that I would put my money in. Regardless, it's something, though, that is iconic in the trade. Thank you for watching. I hope this video has been enlightening. If it has been or has not been, please let me know in the comment section, and please consider subscribing. Thanks, guys, and have a good night.